calling out sick when they aren't getting paid. ABC's Nicole D'Antonio.
Good morning and welcome to the Thursday, November 6th edition of the WSJM Morning Show. It's the video live stream. I'm Ken Lundberg. My special guest this morning, Executive Director for the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission, John Egelhaaf. Good to see you, John.
Thanks, Ken.
How are
Happy
things?
to be here. Yeah, things are good.
Excellent. And we were just coming out of ABC News, and they were talking a little bit about the air travel going to be curtailed by as much as 10% in the United States starting this weekend. That's fun.
It is fun. Anyone who's flown recently kind of knows that there's been plenty of disruption already. So it's really hard to just get a flight that when it's scheduled, that's when you arrive. That's when you depart. It's not working that way.
You flew recently?
I just flew last week
from
DC.
Did you have any air traffic controller related fun? As it were?
Yeah, there were gate changes. So you're sitting there well in advance when you're okay, here's my gate, I'm good. Yeah. And then whoop, all of a sudden there it is. Oh, no, you're at a different gate. And then my great disruption was I had a flight out of Charlotte to, it was DC to Chicago, to O'Hare, and then O'Hare to South Bend, because I was flying out of South Bend.
Okay.
Well, it turned out that they turned my flight into a bus trip. So when I got to Chicago, I was at a gate at O'Hare, and we all loaded up into a bus, even though our ticket was for a flight.
Did you think you were getting on a plane?
People were incensed.
They
all thought they were getting on a plane, and they thought they'd be home or in South Bend in an hour or less, right? Well, instead it was a 3-hour bus ride.
I don't know what I would do.
Well, there's a lot of people that decided that maybe swearing a lot was the right way to approach it.
Did you get that? Did they have to go through the same safety speech at the beginning of the bus ride?
Oh, good question.
They stood at the bus thing and said, air.
No,
because was it a nice bus at least?
It was a nice enough bus, I guess. Yeah.
That's irritating. I wonder how many people missed the appointments and stuff like that. Well, anyway, thank you for sharing that. And TSA, are they getting in and out of airport security?
No issues for me. I mean, of course, you just know you got to get there early, right? And once you do that, then you're probably okay.
Yeah. It'll be an interesting tack. And obviously, I mean, it's a real one because the air traffic controllers, many have been calling out sick. They're not getting paid during the government shutdown. And Sean Duffy and the FAA administrator, transportation secretary, and the FAA says we've got to reduce the amount of flights that we have because we don't have the air traffic controller capacity to ensure complete safety as we have been.
Well, I can tell you that on my flight from South Bend to DC, I sat on the tarmac for about an hour. So we loaded up, pulled out of the gate, and just sat there for an hour. And I totally think that was because of traffic and density of travel. And they needed to do that. Yeah.
And thinking about it further, I guess maybe it would be safer to be on a bus in some cases.
Or else just turn off that thing in your brain that says, I'm going to be pissed off about this, and just go, if I get there, all right, I guess maybe that's good enough.
Very good. Very good point of view, perspective. I appreciate that. John Egelhaaf is here. He's the Executive Director of the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. We are going to be talking about transportation this hour, land transportation, right?
Yeah.
Mostly.
Back to buses. So we'll talk about that next hour. We'll explore kind of how we got into the situation where we are currently and where we go forward from here. I promised John that I'd break out some puns about transportation. We'll do some drive-bys on that. Ha. It's all coming up after news. It's the WSJM Morning Show. Good morning.
Let's get by.
Maybe we should go to 27cash.com.
With our bad credit?
27cash.com is one of the largest personal loan networks. They can help people with any type of credit get up to $5,000, and cash can hit our bank account as soon as tomorrow.
When you need extra cash, go to 27cash.com. That's 27cash.com. 27cash.com.
WSJM News now.
Team coverage from the WSJM newsroom on News Talk Sports 94.9 WSJM.
40 degrees in Benton Harbor right now, 45 in St. Joseph, 41 degrees and clear skies in South Haven. It is a gorgeous Thursday, or at least it's going to be, with sunny skies and light winds, although the winds are going to pick up later on. Good morning, I'm Ken Lundberg. It's the WSJM Morning Show. We've got a special guest in studio, John Egelhaaf, Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. We're going to be talking with him this hour about transportation issues, everything you wanted to know about our area's transportation situation, how we got here, where we are now, and where we're going forward. Hopefully, we'll talk about those things this hour, so you can tune in on the video live stream for the full unedited conversation. Snippets of that, portions of it, good portions, will be here on the radio for you as well. But I mentioned the weather forecast, and I know a lot of people are cringing when we talk about snow. There is a possibility of snow coming up this weekend. We'll talk about that. Tonight's forecast is just going to be mostly cloudy and a 40% chance of rain. The winds are going to pick back up out of the south, gusting up to 25 miles per hour, but the low overnight's only going to get down to 45-ish. Friday's forecast, cloudy. Tomorrow, you're going to need a raincoat or a bumper chute or something like that, because it's going to be a 70% chance of rain showers, tapering off in the afternoon, high around 60, and that wind out of the southwest gusting into 25. Saturday's forecast, partly cloudy, a 40% chance of rain late in the day, becoming an 80% chance Saturday night. The high is going to be 50, the low is going to be 43. Now, as we head into Sunday, there is a 60% chance of rain or, parenthesis, snow showers. That's mostly cloudy, a 60% chance of rain or snow showers on Sunday. The high is going to be around 40 degrees, and the low is going to be around 30. Monday's forecast, mostly cloudy, 40% chance of lake effect snow on Monday. The high on Monday is going to be around 36. The low is going to be 27. So if we're going to have a snow event day, probably looking at that Monday time frame as a good possibility. Tuesday's forecast, mostly cloudy, a 20% chance of snow, and a high around 40 with a low around 24 degrees. And that's going to be the cold one of the week, 24 degrees for a low on Tuesday. Some of the news we're following from the WSJM newsroom. Community leaders in Benton Harbor are joining forces to address homelessness. Reverend Andre Palmer of Bethel Christian Restoration Center told city commissioners this week that a recent forum began efforts to create more permanent solutions for the unhoused.
We had about 80 to 100 people there, and we were just trying to figure out and have the goal of how we could best serve members of our community who are unhoused, especially in a way that we will provide shelter to them throughout the winter months and not leave them outside.
Palmer said clergy, nonprofits, and the city's ad hoc committee are working together to find options beyond temporary fixes.
That will require some financial resources from the city. Perhaps the funding that was intended to be requested to provide picnic tables can be allocated to this. We also have a few local funders who express willingness to support as well.
Mayor Marcus Muhammad has formed that committee, and ideas include creating a resource center and expanding shelter space. The South Haven Downtown Development Authority says its tax increment financing plan continues to benefit the city. DDA Director Suzanne Brock told the City Council the TIF captures downtown tax growth for local improvements.
So let's say there's a property that's worth $1 million. That's their set valuation. And then the following year, it was valued at $1,250,000. That $250,000 growth will then be part of that TIF money.
She said the program has funded parking and sidewalk upgrades, electrical work, and winter lighting downtown.
We took on the responsibility of paying for the gas, I guess, for the fireplace. So we went ahead and fund that bill. And social district, we take care of all the labels and the signage that are part of that social district. Our annual holiday lighting, we light the pavilion.
Future projects include work on Huron Street, the Four Seasons Pavilion, and new wayfinding signs. Also in South Haven, officials have introduced the city's first full-time recreation director. Chris Van Hecken comes from Grand Haven, where he led the Northwest Ottawa Recreation Authority. He told the City Council this week he's focused on building new programs and partnerships.
Our goals are to make our programs inclusive, that all people, youth and adults, will feel welcome. We're starting to implement programming.
Van Hecken said a new recreation website will launch by the end of this month.
That will help families in the community that for their children, if they want to play Little League baseball, racket football, swimming, or wrestling, they'll have have one landing spot.
He also noted a recent groundbreaking at Riverwoods Park, a 50-acre site recently purchased by the South Haven Area Recreation Authority. And staying up north for this one, this is an update to a story we told you about earlier this week. A section of southbound US 131 in Allegan County could remain closed through the weekend after a semi-truck carrying heavy machinery struck the 146th Avenue overpass in Door Township on Monday. No injuries were reported in the crash. Michigan Department of Transportation spokesperson John Richard says the truck's excavator boom was not fully lowered when it was traveling down the highway. Unfortunately, that's when it hit a bridge beam. This marks the third overpass collision along US 131 in the county this year. Crews were still repairing a damaged area from a similar crash in August when Monday's incident happened. Southbound traffic is being detoured from 100th Street Southwest to South Division Avenue and the next interchange, causing a lot of congestion in that area. So if you're sending anyone up north, do know that that's going to be a problem, at least a time delay. MDOT plans to replace the damaged beam before reopening southbound lanes. 146th Avenue will remain closed indefinitely, according to officials. It's 7:11. It's the WSJM Morning Show. Good morning. I'm Ken Lundberg. With me this morning, John Egelhaaf from the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. It's very good to see you, John. How are you this morning?
Thank you, Ken. I'm good.
Good. We're going to talk about transportation, but for those who are not familiar with your organization, perhaps you could give us a brief overview, a summary of what it is the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission does.
Sure.
I know you do a lot.
That's okay. We're known as a regional planning organization. We're one of 14 of them across the state. We were enabled by state legislation and then formally created by the three counties of Berrien, Cass, and Van Buren. We're a nonprofit. We help the individuals and communities within the three counties work through what their vision for the future might be, particularly with land use issues, but often with other things like transportation and the like, and then help build a roadmap to help them get there. That's their specialty.
Yeah, I like to think of the Planning Commission as a stable of experts that all the area municipalities rely on to help work out the details. The municipalities, the mayors, the city councils, the commissions, the planning directors there, they have a vision, but they need your expertise. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we're really good at connecting up to federal and state resources to be able to say, if you want to do this, local community, here are the ways you can do it. And here are the partners you want to connect with at state and federal level. And also how to, align your own assets within the whatever jurisdiction or within our region.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're going to be talking with John this hour. We're going to talk about transportation because there's an issue with our area transportation authority, TCATA, and the Michigan Department of Transportation has said, hey, we're going to cut off funding to you next year. And so you better, region, step up and figure out if you want a regional transportation system, you better work out what that looks like.
Right.
Fair characterization?
It is. So where do we go from here,
Yeah.
right? And that clock, the alarm bell goes off October 1 of 2026. So
that's not a lot of time. You just gave me a lot of anxiety.
No, it really, it's true. So between now and then, we've got to figure out what we do when there's a big hole blown in our public transit service delivery system in the form of no more TCATA. So what happens? How do we account for that?
Okay, so we're going to talk about that this hour with John Egelhaaf from Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. That is starting now here on the WSJM Morning Show. First on the video live stream. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. We've got to get some sports in. Dave Wolf is here.
The Detroit Pistons made.
Okay, on the video live stream. And thank you for being that resource for a lot of the municipalities. Out of Berrien, Cass, and Van Buren counties, how many municipalities are you dealing with?
86 units of government.
Holy mackerel!
Plus the Pokagon Band as well. We're there for them if they need us.
Yeah. How do you manage all that? How many staff do you have working there?
8. It's 8, including myself.
So everyone gets 11 different municipalities to work with. No, I mean you've got folks with expertise in different areas.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So and that sort of divides up loosely because we really cooperate within the office. But transportation, economic development, community development, in other words, master planning and the like, environmental. And then we have a GIS expert on staff who kind of populates all of those different columns of interest.
Yeah, the GIS, that's mapping.
Yes, yes,
But-
geographic information.
But
systems.
it's not just drawing a map. What is it? It's different layers of information.
It's an incredible resource where you can take tabular data, numbers and stuff that's in a table,
Yeah.
and translate that into geography. So whenever you put a point on a map in GIS, you can click on that point and get all kinds of data about that point.
Yeah,
So
like
it's-
how much are people earning in this area, the median income, what are the home values and the property values, what are the taxes in this area, who has what jurisdiction here, all that?
You can think about GIS too as layers of information too. So any given map might have 8, 10, 15 layers of data, and you can turn those on and off. So you can kind of make your own map based on the data you want to see represented.
Yeah, trust me, I geek out on that stuff all the time. I love GIS.
It's great for geeks.
Yeah. Well, hey now. You have all that expertise in house. You're working day to day with the area municipalities. You're working up through the state, and you touch the federal government as well. Federal government sometimes gives you grants. Sometimes they claw them back. Unfortunately, how any impact so far with the government shutdown?
Yes, a couple of different points of impact, but I think to sort of circle it back and make it relevant to public transit, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do involves sort of organizing multiple communities around a single issue and then aligning their work and matching that up with funding that's available. So it's kind of what I already mentioned, but when it comes to transportation, the state and federal government mandate that urbanized areas need to collaborate together and plan their transportation projects together as a region. So that happens in the St. Joe Benton Harbor area with 14, I think, different jurisdictions. So the cities, St. Joe Benton Harbor, and also the townships kind of in a concentric rings around. They all get together and we facilitate a bigger conversation about, you want to redo this road, you want to do this other transportation endeavor. We have a pot of money that the state and feds make available. We match the projects and their prioritization up with the dollars that are available. Well, public transit also fits into that. So Takata would come to that group that we facilitate, and they would say, we want to get 3 new buses. We want to do these revisions to our headquarters. These various projects we want to do. Will you help us get funding for that? So that's kind of our connection with Takata.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you to reinforce a couple of those points in just a moment. We're going to get back on the radio here. We're on the video live stream now at 7:18. It's the WSJM Morning Show, talking with John Egelhaaf from the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission.
I'm WSBT 22 Chief Meteorologist Carrie Peugeot.
The Morning Show with Ken and Friends on 94.9 WSJM.
7:18, it's the WSJM Morning Show. Good morning. I'm Ken Lundberg. Here with me this morning is the Executive Director, John Egelhaaf of the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. Thanks again for joining us here on the Morning Show. You've been in here before. You're a radio fan. You like radio. Mm-hmm. Is this right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We're talking about transportation, and one of the things that we want to explore this morning is there's a I don't know, sort of Damocles hanging over the top of us, where the Michigan Department of Transportation has said you've got until October of 2026 to figure out a new plan for your regional transportation, because we're no longer going to send money to your current Twin Cities Area Transportation Authority in its current form, Takata. And so to talk about this topic, because it's going to require regional thought and action on this, we thought we'd have John in to talk a little bit more about kind of what is the state of play here and where can we go next. But you were talking on the video live stream about there's a requirement from both the state and the federal authorities that regions like ours work together across municipalities to define what our transportation solutions are going to look like. How is that right?
That is right.
Okay, and so what is the state of play? What area are we talking about when we're talking about Takata?
So geographically?
Yes.
Takata has a service area that is essentially equivalent to the urbanized, what the U.S. Census identifies as the urbanized area in Berrien County. So that means it's St. Joe, it's Benton Harbor, but it's also a sort of ring, if you will, of townships around that. Let's call it around 14 jurisdictions.
And so in the current model, do all of those jurisdictions put money into a local kitty so that there is a transportation service?
Great question. The answer is no. Only one of them does. And that is through of course, an approved millage. That's the way that would happen. And Benton Harbor is the only jurisdiction that contributes local money to the running of Takata, even though their service area is much broader than just Benton Harbor.
And so so Benton Harbor officials have said, nah, that's not fair. More people have to come to the table, and that's part of the reason. I think it's a correct characterization. That's part of the reason why they think that, or they believe that their financial problems exist. MDOT, what has MDOT said to Takata?
Essentially,
and to regional leaders.
Yeah, they sent a letter to the county and to the city and to Takata that said, as you have already stated, that they're not going to support the authority. So the Takata is a formal legal authority, and it has its own taxing authority, all of that, kind of like a school district almost. That's not going to work for MDOT anymore. So they're telling all of those entities that they sent the letter to, and everyone else, you got to think up something else.
Yeah.
Something else has got to work.
And how much money are we talking about MDOT withholding?
Ooh,
we can come back to that.
Yeah, I've got that noted. So let's circle back to that in detail.
But I know it's substantial, and basically without the state money on that regional transportation service, or at least what Takata is today, doesn't move forward. And so what are the options on the table? And is this something that is going to go easy between now and October 2026?
Well, it is a very challenging conundrum. It is. There are lots of different configurations that this could take on. And I just, it's your job today is to keep me in a frame here, because I could go all over the place.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different ways that a new authority could be reconstituted. Do you go countywide? Do you go just the urbanized area and sort of recreate an authority that basically was already kind of
doing what Takata was supposed to be doing?
But it's about the way funding is built. It's about the way governance is managed. It's also about service delivery and how that's going to be handled. And the fundamental challenge of public transit anymore is there is a different model for urban public transit and rural public transit. The needs are different. You don't have fixed routes throughout the entire service area because it's not plausible. Why would you run a bus and log all those miles, pay for all that gas, and pick up one person, but run that route 4 times a day? It doesn't make sense. So there are ways to run a public transit operation that optimize efficiency. And what does that look like, rural to urban? So there's a lot of those kinds of questions that need to be answered. And for local units of government, they really are going to have to look carefully at themselves and their population and say, do we think we need to invest our local dollars in a public transit authority? Because honestly, it's not going to work unless local funding is invested. That's part of the reason why Takata was running at a deficit. Presently, Berrien Bus runs at a deficit as well. So local dollars are essential to making public transit work. So you got this nice big chunk of federal and state dollars, but you leave some on the table if you don't also invest local dollars.
Yeah, and we're talking with John Egelhaaf from the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission about public transit and the crossroads that we are at currently. And before we got on the air this morning, John, you were mentioning that this really is 3 buckets. You think about it in 3 buckets, and you started touching on them here a moment ago: service delivery, funding, and governance. When you talk about service delivery, the first thing I think about is what's the need? How much? What is the need for public transit in our area? And then let's go from there. How much need do we have?
Yeah, this is a really good question because there's a sort of supposition here that you look at the way the volume of use of public transit presently and think that that's your measure. But in fact, it's really about potential. So it is, if we want public transit to be an economic lubricant, if we want it to be the way that a lot of folks can get to their medical appointments and there's all kinds of really essential medical needs that are, how about local access to healthy food? That is a thing. So household staples and social cohesion, for goodness sake. I mean, for people to get to their relative's house so they can have dinner together. I mean, one of the things that gets missed is that there are pockets of Berrien County where up to 30% of the population, the households, do not have access to a vehicle. That is a huge chunk of our population that we need to account for. And without public transit, you're in really big trouble if you're in one of those households. So we talked a little bit about GIS mapping. We've done a lot of that kind of mapping to look at where the pockets of need are. How can public transit sort of populate or pollinate those places, move people from there to other pockets of opportunity? Where are the job centers? Okay, we need to, make sure that transit moves between those job centers and those population centers. So we know a lot about that. So, I mean, I think that your question it asks for specifics, but I think I'll just answer it generally to say that our ability to know that answer is pretty good. Then the next question is, can you build the resource robust enough to meet some or many or all of those needs? And that's about funding and about buy-in. Yeah. So the opportunity, the prospect of a really well-executed public transit operation, that's available to us. So instead of thinking about the very baseline, how do we just keep a public transit operation going? My hope is that we'll think much broader about it and say, there's an enormous opportunity here. Employers are really interested in this. Healthcare providers are extremely interested in getting this right. So how can we combine that general kind of recognition of the importance of public transit, connect that to the actual provision of the service and what the governance looks like?
Yeah. Thank you for that explanation. And we're talking with John Egelhaaf. He is the executive director of the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. And you talk about healthcare and you talk about major employers in the area. You think about Corewell Health. They have, they are the healthcare based giant in the area and the biggest employer in the area. And so they're going to, I assume they're a stakeholder at the table on this as well.
Well, I think there's an interesting kind of layer of this that I wouldn't mind talking about.
Sure.
If Corewell, as well as a bunch of other healthcare providers, they get together on a regular basis and have for really decades under this kind of umbrella called the Healthy Berrien Consortium.
Yep.
So here you have CEOs from all of these major health providers. They have done a strategic plan. Well, actually, they invited the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission to be part of this. So I am privileged to be able to be in this kind of circle. They've done a strategic plan recently and identified high priority issues they want to address. And mobility, public transit is at the top of that list. So along with two other elements. So they have already or had already identified moving people to where the need is as a high priority. And then along comes this issue.
Right.
So it's sort of amped up the temperature and the import of getting this right. So yes, you're right. The healthcare providers have unified voice on this, that they really believe that these upstream things like transit is really important for downstream healthcare provision. So, this idea that, that'll take care of itself, those organizations are realizing, no, we have to be involved and have a voice about how that gets managed.
Okay. We've laid the minefield here, so we'll come back and talk about the landscape and what some of the options are on the table and how those discussions have gone so far. That's coming up right here on the WSJM Morning Show. It's 7:31. We've got some important messages, and then our financial moment from Bloomberg. That's coming up right after these. Back here on the video live stream still with John Egelhaaf from Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. Sorry if I'm asking a lot of questions, but I mean, it's a huge issue.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was a reporter in a community of about, at the time, 40,000 people. And they've since boomed to like over 100,000 people. And at the time that I was there, they were just broaching this idea of moving from, we don't have a regional transit authority, to implementing one. And they went through a number of campaigns and elections, and they established one. And now it's an integral part of that society. A couple of decades, maybe, I don't want to say how many decades removed from that. And it's integrated into the system. But it was tough to get that negotiation started between people who said, American, I've got a car and I'm going to go wherever I want, whenever I want, versus and why do I need to pay for a bus? Versus the other end of the equation, where it's like we have people, like you said, 30% of a household who doesn't have access to a vehicle, and that's talking about getting groceries to put food on the table, going to healthcare, going to education, and the other, and your employers. Mm-hmm. So how do we? Where are we in this discussion? Because we have Takata currently. Even though it feels almost like for many people, an invisible transit authority.
Well, I'm going to.
And correct me if I'm wrong on any of this.
No, you're not wrong,
Okay.
But I'm also going to I want to make sure that the audience kind of has a good sort of foundation about what we're talking about here. There are 3 transit providers in Berrien County. There is Takata that we already talked about. There's Berrien Bus, that's kind of the rural provider. And then there's Niles Dial-A-Ride, which takes care of Niles and Buchanan.
And they just reapproved their millage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So 3 different providers, right? And that is not, that is somewhat unique across the state. It's not unusual for a county to be served by a single authority. So the fact that we presently have 3 different authorities that exist and each one of them has their own approach to the way they govern themselves.
Yeah.
So Takata has its own board. Berrien Bus is run by the County Board of Commissioners. And Niles Dial-A-Ride is run by the Niles City Commission. So 3 different systems, getting from one place in the county to another, if you are bridging the service area of those multiple systems. No single dispatch for the 3, 3 different budgets, 3 different approaches to fare structure, all of that kind of stuff. This is where we are presently.
Yeah.
So if MDOT hadn't told us to get it figured out, we probably should have had it figured out before.
Why haven't we?
Well, I think it's partly because of what you already described in your setup here. It's kind of invisible to a lot of people. I want to tell everyone that if you don't think you need public transit, I would respond with, you are only temporarily able-bodied, whoever you are listening to this show. If you can no longer drive, and for whatever reason, you are apprehensive about putting out your son or your daughter or your wife or whoever it is to get you from one place to another, what options do you have? And if you don't have public transit as one of those options, we're all in a lot of trouble, right? So a lot of the things that we have come to assume about what it means to just be in our society depend on mobility. And if you don't have public transit filling in some of those blanks, you got a lot of issues. I also think this is, my head goes back to a lot of folks pay for good schools in a community that don't have children. So it's not altogether different to recognize that presently you don't have this need, but it is worth investing in because of all these other reasons, because people can get to jobs, because, all of those reasons that make it make sense that we as a community should invest in this resource. So in much the same way you described, hey, I'm an American, I've got my car, I can get around. Yes, you can now. Your neighbor may not be able to, and you yourself are only going to be, able to drive that car for so long.
Yeah. And there, as you mentioned, you may be able-bodied this moment, or your parents might be, but there may be coming a time when they've got to get to the doctor for a regular appointment, and it's inconvenient for you to take them. Maybe they can get on public transit or something along those lines.
There's folks who are on kidney dialysis that have regular obligations to keep their, themselves together, that really rely on public transit. So, that's just one small example, but it just goes on and on. It's very deep.
Yeah. And we'll talk about, I'm curious about the expense, the cost, and some of the benefits from that. Hang on, I got to get us back on the radio. It's the WSJM Morning Show. Good conversation.
Morning Show with Ken and Friends on 94.9 WSJM.
7:37. It's the WSJM Morning Show. We're talking with John Egelhaaf from the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. He's the executive director there, having a great conversation about transportation, public transportation, and some of the topics that are currently on the table and must be decided one way or another between now and October of 2026, because MDOT has taken away the check for Takata, and hopefully they'll give us back that money when a regional transit authority solution is put in place. So we'll see what happens, but we're going to continue that conversation with John here on the WSJM Morning Show on the video live stream in just a moment. But first off, quick check of the weather forecast today. Partly sunny, a high of 56. South winds 5 to 10. Tonight's forecast, mostly cloudy, a chance of rain, and a low of 45. The wind will continue to gust up to 25 miles per hour. Tomorrow's forecast, Friday, it's going to be a rainy morning, a rainy start to the morning, with even a thunderstorm or two possible. That'll taper off in the afternoon, giving us a high around 60 degrees tomorrow. The wind's still gusting out of the southwest, 25 miles per hour. Rain and a possibility of snow over the weekend. We've got more coming up in just a moment right here on the WSJM Morning Show. First off, national news.
ABC News, I'm Sherry Preston. Get ready for a big mess at the nation's airports this weekend now that the FAA plans to cut the number of flights at about 40 airports because of air traffic control shortages caused by the government shutdown. ABC's Rachel Scott with more.
ABC News obtaining the list of the 40 airports that will be impacted. From the nation's busiest airport, Atlanta, Hartsfield, Jackson, to LAX, Dallas, JFK, Miami, Detroit, and DCA here in Washington. Air traffic controllers have been forced to work without pay during the government shutdown, leading to staffing shortages, delays, and ground stops.
The government shutdown has now hit day 37, and as of now, there are no signs of a congressional breakthrough on ending it. At the Supreme Court on Wednesday, even some conservative justices seem skeptical about President Trump's ability to use emergency powers to pass sweeping tariffs, although they did admit reversing the move and refunding the money already brought in would be a mess. This is ABC News.
WSJM News Now. Team coverage from the WSJM Newsroom on News Talk Sports 94.9 WSJM.
7:39. Some of the news stories we have coming up just after 8 o'clock. St. Joseph Public School leaders are thanking voters for approving their bond request this week. The vote follows last year's failed $98 million proposal, this year's $59 million bond proposal. We'll hear from the Board of Education President Carrie Wright on why it passed this time around. Also, reaction to this week's election results. Former Congressman Fred Upton says the outcomes send a clear message to Republicans ahead of next year's midterms. We'll tell you what that is. And also in the news, Michigan State Police are collecting food and personal care items this month as part of their effort to support local families. We'll tell you how you can donate at a Michigan State Police post this whole month of November, right here on the WSJM Morning Show. Again, that news coming up just after 8 o'clock. It's 7:40. We're continuing our conversation with John Egelhaaf, the Executive Director of the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission, talking about regional transit. That's coming up right now on the video live stream. Coming up here on the radio, we've got sports with Dave Wolf after a look at state news. All right, back on the video live stream. John, I asked you for some numbers. Lay them on me.
I think I know I could do better to give you the actual local millage that Benton Harbor contributes to Takata's budget.
Okay.
But I can give you revenue and expense so you get a sense for scale
here.
Takata's, these are numbers out of their audit from, I believe it's 2024.
Okay.
So revenue for Takata in 24, 2,459,000 and change. Expenses, 2,911,000. So they ran at a deficit of 450,000.
Yeah, somewhere around $500,000. Okay.
Yeah, and I do believe that, and I probably will regret this, but I think that their millage draws in something on the order of 200,000 a year or thereabouts. And then there's Berrien Bus. Berrien Bus is at $1,186,000 revenue, and their expenses at 1.6 million. So they're at a deficit of 438 in 24. And then Niles Dart runs at a surplus because they have a local millage. So they're at 1.1 million revenue, expenses 833 a year. So a $278,000 surplus in 24.
Okay. Concerning that there are deficits being run for sure. But it seems encouraging that for a region, Berrien County alone, you think about the numbers you just mentioned, that doesn't seem like a whole lot if you have the whole county taking a portion of it, taking some responsibility for it.
You're absolutely right about that. I mean, the spreading that burden, the local burden, if you want to call it that, or investment, local investment across a lot of communities says really good things about the kind of service that you could deliver. So yeah, it's a real possibility, but it is also, I mean, to get folks from where we kind of presently are to a place where they have real aspirations about what public transit can and should be, and then invest in that aspiration, that requires a certain amount of, I don't know, education is probably not the right word, but let's make it a topic of conversation that we're all sort of engaged in. That's the thing we need to do.
So if you think about the three entities and the services they're currently providing and the dollars they're currently using and spending, is it a one-for-one replacement that's on the table for next year to meet MDOT's challenge? Because you're immediately going to capture, if you go regional, if you have the buy-in from Niles and Berrien County with Takata, if you get buy-in, you could eliminate some redundancies.
That's correct.
Potentially, and make some efficiencies, and who knows, maybe even get a lower insurance premium.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. I mean, that's another thing, and Ken's alluding to the fact that Takata had to go, they were dropped from their insurance pool, which there is a sort of, a lot of the transit providers across the state are part of a pool for insurance. Takata had so many accidents and became such a risk for that pool that they dropped them.
Yeah.
So they had to go out in the open market and solicit bids, and wound up having basically, I think, something on the order of almost 10 times the cost, which is really untenable. They can't sustain that. Okay, so that's different. Your question about, is it a one-for-one looking kind of replacement in 26 and beyond? It probably would have to be in the near term like that, because the idea of creating an authority and then the possibility of pushing getting a local millage on the ballot across the county, all of that stuff takes time. So the really the idea of sort of recreating the service delivery options that are presently out there, that's realistic in the near term. But where we go in the mid and long term, that's the bigger question about, how do we solve this really? So we're not solving it in the near term because we got to just kind of refigure this whole thing about the authority and how that's all going to look, and then move on to service delivery after that.
Okay, so two different questions. And so how, for lack of a better term, how under the gun are we to get a solution today for a replacement for Takata?
Very much under the gun. And the fact that it's going to take a while to work through all the details of that means we need to be on it right now.
What questions are outstanding? Who's at the table, and who do you need a alignment from to get this moving forward?
Well, the county commission, the Board of Commissioners has a committee that is, pondering these things. They are grinding away on how this can work and what are the details that need to be in play here to have the conversation. So we know that exists. We know that they've invited principals from Benton Harbor to join that conversation. So those things are happening presently, and they're moving the ball down the field that way. So there you go. I mean, that's a lot of that.
So Berrien County.
Yep. And I think at some point, the bigger, more broad conversation with, when you really open it up and start engaging at a much more public level, those topic areas and the themes will take on their own sort of momentum from there.
Yeah. So what you need to get Takata's replacement that will make MDOT happy, is it just solely lie with Berrien County, the commission at this point?
It could, but it doesn't have to.
Okay.
I think that it could.
Depends on the solution, it sounds like.
I think it does, and I wouldn't want to presuppose any route toward that solution. Certainly, the county commission is a really important driver of what can happen, but they can also host a bigger and broader conversation about what other options could be out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't, and I'm not in the middle of that conversation. So I'm speaking as an outsider.
Okay. We'll be right back on the radio. We're going to do our Moody on the Market update at 7:47 here on the WSJM Morning Show.
We'll stay in the mid 40s. And then for Friday, rain showers and thunderstorms in the morning hours, some sun in the afternoon with high temperatures right around 60. I'm WSBT 22 Chief Meteorologist Carrie Peugeot.
The Morning Show with Ken Lundberg on WSJM.
7:48, it's the WSJM Morning Show. I'm Ken Lundberg. Let's do our Moody on the Market update with our special guest this morning, John Egelhaaf with the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. Moody on the Market update brought to you by Insurance Management Service. Call IMS today, your local auto owner's insurance agency in St. Joseph and in Niles. I'm gonna once again reset of what we were talking about this morning. It's basically we've got some transit issues to deal with between now and October of next year because MDOT has said, hey, you've got this transit authority right now, the Twin Cities Area Transit Authority, Takata, and we're not going to fund it anymore starting October 1, 2026. And so that leaves a question of how will that service that's currently provided by Takata move forward in Berrien County going forward. And one of the voices at the table is Southwest Michigan Planning Commission and John Egelhaaf. He's been explaining kind of the current landscape and some of the solutions going forward, which could be regional, which could take our 3 transit authorities and make them potentially into one. I mean, I think that's a topic that's on the table, right?
Sure. It's a possibility. I think the folks in Niles at Dial-A-Ride would say, wait a second, things are going fine down
We're
here.
Just fine. Leave us alone.
Yeah. So it could wind up being some sort of a, whatever authority would be created might have a contractual relationship with Niles to sort of incorporate the way they deliver service into this bigger question.
Which makes a lot of sense as long as folks are at the table and aligning, because you painted a picture earlier. If you, for some reason, wanted to get from South County to North County, let's say you had either an education requirement or a healthcare requirement or a job requirement. If you wanted to get from South County today to North County, could you do it on public transit all at once?
If you had
and how many days would that take?
I was going to say, if you had the whole day available to you, theoretically, yeah. But that involves leaving the Takata service area, getting picked up by Berrien Bus taking you somewhere, and then in theory also then Berrien Bus may be leaving you, and then Niles Dial-A-Ride picking you up and taking you to your final destination. That sounds okay if you're always moving the whole time, but you are waiting at a significant parts of that journey. So you're standing and waiting for the next pickup. So it's not very plausible.
No.
It really isn't.
No.
I mean, you can map it out, but it doesn't mean that people who have that need would be satisfied with the result.
Yeah, and the three key areas you talked about: service delivery, funding, and governance. So those are all the things that are going into this. So where do we stand right now today?
I think it might be useful to point out that Takata is something else is happening in Takata right now.
Okay.
And it is that they have made a decision to have their the management of Takata be land with a private entity.
Yeah.
So they put out a request for proposals to private entities to take on the management of Takata. So Takata would no longer be managed internally, but would be managed by an outside entity. The proposals came back. There were quite a few, from what I understand. And the decision about who to award that contract to is in process right now.
Okay.
So people might be thinking, oh, I thought I knew what was going on, but then there's this. Well, this is somewhat separate.
Yeah.
So there could be a third-party entity managing Takata, certainly, while this other big conversation about the protracted existence of Takata is also on the table.
What does that do to the mix?
It doesn't change things much, in that it might change things in the very near term, because the way the budget is managed, the way service delivery is done, the way routes are conceived might be changed, because management would be different. And presumably, hopefully, there's a lot of expertise in this third-party consultant, and they will bring that expertise to the management and improve service to some degree, if possible.
Yeah.
So there's that in the near term. People may see results like really quickly. But, the bigger question of, hey, we really have bigger, more existential questions we got to solve with Takata. Those questions are outside of that management.
Yeah.
contract.
So that interim management company, thank you for bringing that up. The interim management company, would they have a 10-month contract?
I'm not exactly sure. I've read the proposal, I think, or the RFP.
Yeah.
I think it's a year. And I think the intent is it would just transcend whatever other commotion is happening.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes sense. I mean, so it could be that when it's reconstituted in whatever way, the management
Continues.
persists.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure. And it's almost better that I not know, because why would I know?
Yeah.
I mean, this is really up to the Takata board and them.
How has Takata felt about being told by MDOT you're no longer you no longer have our confidence?
I don't think I have an answer. How could they feel great about it?
Right.
For one, but
Sure.
for two, I would say if you didn't notice that there were real systemic, significant problems at Takata, you weren't paying attention. So it couldn't have come as a huge surprise. I think the insurance issue was a real sort of, oh, come to Jesus moment.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
We cannot, given the way revenue and expense play out, this is not sustainable. So I think that they themselves had to recognize that they were in a real, I'll say it again, real existential crisis.
Sure.
Hanging over the edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
And the MDOT thing only said, you're not the only ones that recognize it. We do too. And something very significant has to change.
We're talking with John Egelhaaf. He is the executive director of the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. We're planning for what transportation looks like after October of next year when MDOT says, Takata, you're not going to get our funding anymore, and some opportunities for investment in thinking about transportation on a regional level, where we've got 3 transportation authorities right now. Maybe you could do something different that would be more efficient, save some money, and be more make it easier to get around Berrien County. So we'll talk about this a little bit more. That's part of our Moody on the Market update for this hour. It's brought to you by Insurance Management Service. Call IMS today. They are your local auto owners insurance agency in St. Joseph and in Niles. Back to conclude this interview in just a moment.
Rich Fran and Chair Collins.
Back on the video live stream, John. So, are these the questions? And I hope we got to what you wanted to talk about in regards to this. But are these the questions that are being asked at the table by the stakeholders? What other questions are we missing?
These are the questions that I think I've made the point that I'm not at the table. So my role here is both as a sort of consumer of the expertise that exists in our office. So I am not the sole owner of expertise on this topic. Believe me, in our office, it's deep. But also, we have a role in this thing, and I've talked about it already. It has to do with the funding side and their acquisition of funding based on requests they have annually. But we've also helped them with routing and other kinds of data collection stuff. So we are very much engaged in a dialogue with Takata and have been for some time. But the idea that I'm at the table, as part of that bigger conversation.
No, and I appreciate the clarification on that. And honestly, I think of the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission as a stable of SMEs, subject matter experts, and helping to enable the policymakers in our region make the decisions that they need to make.
That's the hope. And then also, I want to reemphasize that Healthy Berrien Consortium group.
Yeah.
I walked them through a 3-month process of, okay, you think transportation is really important, upstream issue for downstream quality of life. You want to know more about public transit? Let's take a walk through that subject. So that's what's been going on over the last 3 months for HBC, an information provision and a dialogue and a, sort of an open conversation about it. And then ultimately it's going to end up with a platform for HBC from which they advocate for public transit. So they will be advocates for change, and what that actually looks like, we're right on the cusp of making that determination at the HBC.
Yeah. So timeline wise, what are we looking at?
For that?
Yes.
I would say before the year ends, the HBC will have a very clear platform of advocacy that they'll work from.
Okay. And that will basically, the call to action there will be, here are your options. Here's the one that we think is right.
I think it's more like, these are the things that are really important to us. And we think that by saying this, we know that it fits the context of public transit. Like, they're not going to be way out there in some crazy place where public transit cannot deliver what you're asking for. HBC understands public transit based on these sessions we run. And based on that understanding, here's what we think needs to happen.
Okay. We'll come back and conclude this. It's the WSJM Morning Show. Thanks again for joining us on the WSJM Morning Show. If you missed the video live stream, you missed a lot. John Egelhaaf has been with us. He's the executive director for Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. Did we cover it all?
No.
There's a lot to unpack.
In an hour? No way.
We will invite you back if you don't mind. We'd love to hear more, especially as recommendations, or at least a lay of the land, and what policymakers have to then think about and decide we'd love to have you back to talk us through those.
I know it's a privilege to be here, so thank you. And anytime you want to invite me, I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you. John Egelhaaf, he is the Executive Director for Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. I know you've got a whole lot of other things going on. Economic development, master plans are in process for a lot of municipalities, and recreation. We love recreation, and that's something that you can use public transit for as well. We'll have you back, and we'll talk more about this. But right now, we've got to get world and national news from ABC. It's 8 o'clock.
From ABC News,